Hi everyone, welcome to 23 Mile with me, Kayode Odeleye. Today we're joined by Sally Wynter, a founder who achieved a feat which many could only dream of, a 7-figure exit just 5 months after launch. Sally is the founder of Hunch, a platform democratizing careers by helping young job seekers land their first roles. Before this, she founded MUHU Spirits, the UK's first CBD-infused gin, which she launched from her bedroom with just £1,000. MUHU took off with a flying start, which led to 2 acquisition offers just 5 months after launch, and she eventually exited to American drinks firm Next Frontier Brands at age 25. What makes her achievement more remarkable is that she comes from a humble background and grew up on free school meals. She started entrepreneurship with no connections, little capital, and no entrepreneurial role models. On the show today, we'll discuss how she was able to rise above adversity to build and exit MUHU, lessons from the exit process, challenges of being a founder, including the impact on mental health, and what she hopes to achieve with Hunch. Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and what an absolutely quality and very flattering intro that was.
Let's start at the very beginning. You've been really open about growing up, I'll say, with a humble background. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that's very much where the fire in my belly comes from. Growing up in a kind of area of North London, which was quite, shall we say, sketchy, might be described as the ends. There was a lot of us in a relatively small space. So I'm actually talking to you from my post-exit house here. And I think it's really funny because I realised only at the end of the build, which is lots of extensions and that I ended up with 5 bathrooms or something, right? And I always joke to people that I think it's PTSD from having shared 1 bathroom between 7 or 8 of us in a flat. You could never get in, and it was always a nightmare. There was no privacy. So I think that's probably come out in later life. But yeah, I think growing up, so I'm one of 5 siblings, and my parents were both musicians. Generally, not the career you're going to make a lot of money in. My mum was a classical violinist. My dad was a jazz musician. So that was kind of cool. But I think life was quite chaotic. Yeah, not the safest of areas. Like I remember coming back from school, with a key between my fingers kind of thing, like walking up my road. So it was a little bit sketchy. And yeah, I'd say we didn't have a lot since the free school meals kind of thing. And I was quite envious. I think I was quite aware early on, like I can't go on this trip or other people have X, Y, Z. And so I think that's where my drive really came from, of that desire to be like, well, why can't I have this, right? Why can't I have that?
You ended up with the first class. Were you always an achiever through primary, high school and university?
Not at all. Can't emphasize that enough. You've done your research there. Not sure how I ended up with the first, to be honest, because my academic kind of dedication has been pretty atrocious over the years. I can't really remember too much about primary school. The biggest thing I remembered is at secondary school. So the changing wind for me, I think, that kept me out of really going off the rails. And I definitely went off the rails, but I mean, like fully dropping out of school, etc., was the fact that I got into a grammar school, a really good grammar school. But I remember distinctly having a meeting called by my head of year that basically said, because my school was very competitive, you had to get a number of GCSEs at a certain grade to stay in for your 6th form. You weren't guaranteed a place. And I remember her calling in my parents and just being like, yeah, this is a really dire situation. She used the word dire. She's like, there's no way Sally's going to be able to get the grades to come in to the 6th form. I mean, my attendance was like 30%. So I wasn't at school a lot. And my test papers were all giving U's. So I did actually end up passing all those exams. I think I got 6 A's and 3 B's or something. So I got what I needed. But yeah, I think I'm very much one of those people that like is very motivated when people tell me I can't, basically.
But then how was university as well? You ended up in journalism starting from uni?
Yeah, somewhat. So I've had this weird thing throughout my life where I've won competitions at each stage that have been quite like unexpected. So in secondary school, for example, when I realized like I can't have these things that I want, and I was desperate to get a computer in my room, again, like we did have a really old computer, but like everyone was sharing that computer. So I was obsessed, and I applied for this art competition, and I had this idea that basically if my work wouldn't be the most artistic, but I thought if I work extremely hard, then there's no way an adult won't be like, you need to give her the prize. The prize was £350 Amazon voucher, which I was like, I'm going to get the computer. So I worked backwards from this thing where I basically went through on half term. I got up at like 4 a.m. and I went on the tube every single day of half term and I photographed every single station and then I made a collage of it. And it looked okay. But basically, I got my teacher to write a letter being like, she spent 50 hours going on the tube. So I knew surely I'm going to get these vouchers, which I did. Journalism is a very similar story. I was at uni and in the first year I saw a competition for journalism. And in my year off actually between school, I've been working as a fundraiser for a charity called Shelter, which helps homeless people. And so I was well versed on that and you had to pitch a news story. And so I pitched that and I got made a finalist and then I was paired up with a journalist and we had to produce this news report. And I managed to win that. So that got me, they showed the report on the news at 6, which was really cool. But then I used that to be like, okay, how can I actually get work here? Like, how can I become a freelancer? So I had a pretty amazing start to my career being on producing the news at 6 for ITV from like my second year, basically. I started freelancing there, which is really cool because also it takes people like years and years to get there. And they're usually a graduate and they've usually studied journalism and they need a way in. So yeah, I've been good at, I guess, I got good quite early at like asking for things because that's what you have to do, right? Lots of people went through that competition. They never asked. And you have to ask for what you want. Otherwise, you don't get it.
Listen, and after school, you stayed on and eventually joined ITV. What was it like in the first few years?
So it was very, very exciting. Not that super well paid, but I think you feel really important producing one of the most watched news programs in the country. In fact, what's interesting is that journalism is very much similar skill set to entrepreneurialism because you basically need to get absolutely obsessed and deep dive in a story for a day, for half a day. You go out, you speak to people, and then you make the program and boom, it's out, it's gone. So it's very like immediate, very much the opposite of say like a corporate job where you might be working on a project for 6 months. And in the newsroom, people don't have a lot of time for you. It's not like, hey, let me teach you how to do things. You're just expected to know everything. So yeah, that was a bit of a baptism by fire, but it was an incredible skill to learn.
But thinking about it, you started off your career on a very high note. Did you at some point think you were going to continue on this path? Was it always obvious it was only going to be there? You were only going to be there for a short while?
Even though I didn't know that entrepreneurship really existed at that stage, I knew that I didn't want to. For me, like I'd started off freelance and I immediately saw office politics in in offices that I worked in the newsroom. And I was like, I would absolutely fucking hate to have to put up with this crap because I'm an employee here. So I guess it was starting to form an idea that I wanted to have that freedom to work on things as I wanted to, rather than being tied into teams where there were difficult characters or people that are really incompetent. And so I freelanced both with ITV News and I also started to work some shifts on their breakfast show. But I think that's where that sense of like, I want to have control of my life came. So I didn't really look like, oh, I'd like to progress up the ranks.
Many people have this whole thing where their entire life is geared towards entrepreneurship and then eventually find that success. For you, it was almost accidental from knowing nothing about entrepreneurship, but then you went on a trip and had the idea for MUHU. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's right. So interesting. I hadn't actually left the UK until I was 16. I'd never had foreign holidays or anything growing up. And yeah, I think it was just after uni or maybe in between the final years where I took a trip to Thailand and Vietnam. And actually it was when I was stuck in a tropical storm for a number of days where I was basically cooped up in this hostel that I started experimenting with like local ingredients and what you call grain spirit, neutral grain spirit, which is basically the base alcohol for vodka and other clear spirits. And so I would like leave like dragon fruit and different flavors inside and experiment with like making those drinks. And then when I got back, it started to become a bit of a hobby. Friends were asking, hey, can you make me some of this? Can you make me some of that? And also I started experimenting, putting things like yerba mate and things that have more of a active effect, whether it's caffeine or something to chill you out. And so that's really where it began.
I guess many of us have crazy ideas, right? Like you're going on holiday, you think you want something, you try it out. How did you turn this into a business despite not having the privileges?
So I think like many people, I had lots of ideas before that. And I was very good at convincing myself out of them. So I definitely think I'm an overthinker and someone that is probably scared of doing something if I can't achieve what I want. So I very much set myself up for overwhelm, which is definitely true at the beginning and something that I'm still working on, but I think I'm getting a lot better at now. But in terms of the idea, how did I make it work? Well, basically it was because I'd seen media articles that were like, CBD is going to be the next avocado on toast. It's going to be huge. It's viral. Everyone had a story about it. Everyone's grandma was taking it. Everyone's cousin and sister. And so I thought, well, this is literally going to explode. And at the time, I guess this would have been end of 2018. I thought, well, I ordered some oil, first of all. I ordered some CBD oil. I tasted it. It tasted bad. The oil format was really weird. We'd never had things in oil before this. That was the second thing. And then the third thing I think needed to be overcome was the cannabis stigma, especially in the UK. And so I thought, if I can solve these issues, if I can put it in something that is familiar to people that are already buying it, feels less scary. Second of all, if I can make it taste good, etc. And three, just make it like fun and more like relaxed. It's something they already buy, so destigmatize. And so I thought, I have no budget, I have very little money. I think I was only like £10 an hour at the time. Didn't have any savings, no friends and family with money kind of thing. And so I thought, right, I'm going to have to market this for free. How would I work back from that? I was like, get visibility in press, and then like retailers will come to me. And that was pretty much my business plan. And I remember getting obsessed with it and like not sleeping and stuff and like getting really, really into it. Which I now realize looking back is probably my ADHD. Didn't know that at the time, but yeah.
Amazing. Something else you've talked about a lot is the budget. A lot of people think they need so many things to get started. You started off with £1,000. How did you manage that?
Yeah, difficult. It was a difficult journey, to say the least. Well, I think the key thing is I didn't actually have £1,000. It was like bits and bobs over a year that I'd spent. So that was kind of the total over a year. But it was like £100 here, £50 there. It was incredibly tough. But it was an incredible growth journey for me. I think there was two main challenges in building up this business and creating it. One was money, just at every turn, having to learn things myself rather than outsource them, including like trademark law and stuff, doing my own registration of the word mark, all of that kind of stuff. But obviously like actually producing the product, etc. So how did I get around that? Through forcing myself to learn about things I wasn't very interested in. Like having to do the website myself using like a $20, $50 template. That was absolutely like very frustrating, extremely difficult and mind-numbingly boring. I remember having a 4-hour interview with HMRC to get my alcohol licenses. I spent a lot of time asking people for coffees, messaging people, asking for help, joining Facebook groups. Particularly the one I was in that I think is I always recommend people is Food Hub, full of food and drink owners, and they're a really lovely community that can talk to you everything from manufacturing, etc. But realistically, I wasn't like actively thinking I get people to believe in the brand, but that's like what was happening is I think just bringing a lot of passion, and people therefore were willing to help me out. I found that in entrepreneurship that people were happy to have a call, have a coffee, and just give me some of their time, which I think was fundamental to me getting there.
What you turned into success is what every single person out there on the street has. Is the ability to ask for help, is the ability to go on YouTube. So you've basically taken all this random ingredient and you've turned it into success. So my question is, what was the thought process? There was a lot of things you could be doing with your time, but you just decided to press on day in, day out. Did you think this is definitely going to succeed, or it was like nothing to lose?
It was weird. It was like it was basically both thinking this is going to go global and also thinking no one's going to buy this. This is a shit idea. I had really like no clue what I was doing. And so I felt completely overwhelmed by this weird ambition I had to like go global. For example, it took me months to register the company. That was scary. Like everything was terrifying. And yeah, I had massive imposter syndrome right through from calling distilleries to, talking about the brand, etc., at events and stuff. And so, yeah, I think there wasn't a decision. I was just obsessed. I couldn't not do it. And that obsession needed to be there because there was so many points where I just thought, I can't get through. And there's one thing, I think that £1,000 got me like the trademark, the product development, the artwork, the logo, all of that kind of stuff. And obviously a lot of the stuff I did for free, like samples and things like that, and the website template. What it didn't get me is an actual physical run of the product that I could then sell. So I think that was one of my biggest blockers when I realized I need like 3.5K to actually make the first run. It was very much a chicken and egg situation. So I was like, well, I can't sell it. I can't pre-sell it even if I don't have photos of it. But if it isn't made, how do I get photos of it? So there's all this stuff of like, I think I spent a small amount of money, like £20 or something, on someone doing like a photorealistic mock-up on Fiverr, and it just looked so bad. So I was like, right, I'm going to need some actual photography here. I basically decided, right, I'm going to get this one sample bottle from the glass provider. And I'm going to put the labels on credit card, and I'm going to take one of those labels, I'm going to stick it on the sample bottle, and I'm going to take that to the shoot, fill it with water, and then get the photographer at the end to just take some free shots. So it's really funny, if you search up the brand MUHU now, it's by hand, and the orange background and stuff, almost all of those shots were done on this shoot. And it's really funny because there's no gin in there, it's just water, a bit of houseplant that I like snapped off in this like shoot location and put in a glass with some sparkling water, and that's still the main image that went out. So I managed to do that, put that on the website, make the website look like it was ready, and then I found a press template for doing PR and started to reach out to journalists. Then I got the coverage, which led to the pre-sales. And so I sold. I had the money through. It all took a long while. Things got banned because it was CBD, loads of issues. But eventually that enabled me to pay for the first batch and then get that out to customers.
You had this whole can-do spirit. You solved the problem with the pre-order. You went up to a flying start and I think sold about £30,000 worth of products within a few months. But this led to a period where you then needed to fundraise. What was happening there? Were you growing faster than you could handle?
So very quickly, I hadn't been paying myself. Cash flow is a massive issue. I was a baby entrepreneur, so I didn't have anyone doing my bookkeeping or accountancy. I was just literally going as it went. I hadn't been paying myself. And so, by December, I launched the actual product. It looked like it was ready, but obviously it wasn't. So pre-sales came in September. Product, after so many massive issues with that obviously risky strategy, hit customers' hands in October. I had some big press, I think the Evening Standard in September, and then October, some more press off the back of that in trade publications at the grocer. That's when I had my first acquisition offer, which naturally, being completely broke, I declined because I was like, this is going to the moon somehow. I have no experience and I'm on my own. I have no money. Somehow thought was just deluded, which I think is a really useful quality. So I turned that down. I think also it was like I'd have to be an employee and I really want to work for a company. So it's that weird dilemma with entrepreneurs and exits. December, I was like, right, I need to fundraise. The lucky thing is because I talked about on LinkedIn my journey, which was fucking scary, and the press that I got. I mean, I got like meetings with angels really easy, but I had no fucking clue about what an investor would want. Like one of my first meetings, they were like, so how are you going to spend the money? And obviously I just went for 150K, which is the SDIS amount. And they were like, how are you going to spend the money? I was like, I don't know, like marketing, stock. And so I learned as much fundraising in those months, like December, January, Feb, that I did in like the entirety of the business, because I just never had that exposure to like what an investor would want or what a return would look like. And so that was a massive learning curve. And it was in February of 2020, end of Feb, when I got that acquisition offer from someone that had been like, oh, we're interested in investing. And then after that meeting came through a term sheet, which was a pretty wild and unexpected thing to happen.
And did you get help with the process? Like you said, a baby entrepreneurs, actually 5 months in, did you hire anyone to help you negotiate the term sheet?
I didn't at first, but I did after not too long. And I think I remember really being like, I'm going to have to get a lawyer. Like, that's such an adult thing to do. And like, that felt so weird. Like, I felt so old being like, I need to find a lawyer. And again, like, having no cash is just such a difficult thing. I think having not too much cash is a good thing. I think you need to get creative and da-da-da-da. But I was really on the other end of the spectrum. And so I was like, well, I won't be able to afford the legal fees. So one of the things I had to do was get them to agree that if the deal, because a lot of exits fall through during the due diligence process for many, many reasons. You're not actually tied in until the end. So I had to negotiate, and I got the other side to agree to pay any legal fees that would come up to de-risk it for me.
Despite all the challenges, you're able to pull off the acquisition. Can you tell us how much the exit was for?
I probably need to keep it a little bit vague, but yeah, it was a couple of mil total value of the deal. I was the only shareholder. And yeah, it was a weird one, actually. The psychology of exiting that fast was really bizarre, because again, it's that imposter syndrome thing. I was like, well, I didn't hire anyone. I didn't have an office. I didn't have like millions of revenue. So it was like, I had like, obviously it was like amazing, life changing and literally incomprehensible before it happened. But then I felt a bit like a fraud only because I hadn't done all the things I thought you had to do to have an exit. And then speaking to entrepreneurs, they were like, no, your exit is what we want. Like, this is the dream. Obviously, because exits are so rare. So yeah, it was honestly still feels very weird, like a pinch me moment thinking about the journey that I went through. It almost still feels incomprehensible to a degree that happened.
In terms of the process, you talked about how your investment in press and PR led to the 2 acquisition offers. Is there anything else about that exit process? What's the top 2 or top 3 lessons founders need to bear in mind to prepare their businesses for exit?
So I think this is not something that I did, but you should be building as if you're building a 10, 100 million pound business from the beginning. So that includes documenting all your processes, really boring, but really fundamental things, documenting your processes, protecting any IP that I did do very early on. Yeah, having an account, things like, so I had to really scramble to get all my stuff ready for exit. But I think now going in, I would be a lot more adult about it. But yeah, I'd say PR, personal brand, like both those acquisitions came from directly people seeing me in the newspaper, in the Evening Standard, in the Metro, big national things that I managed to get for myself and being like, that person, I want that person essentially. And I think I've had a lot of time to look at why I exited. Obviously, I was in a really hot space. So you often see things like rapid grocery, etc. Market goes crazy, lots of VC money. And then often like one brand will buy another. So obviously I was in the CBD space. I was early. It was a hot space. And so people say, oh, you sold a gym brand. Really, I sold a CBD brand, a very, very timely thing because it was hot and that company wanted to acquire a bunch of brands. But second of all, I think it was really a talent acquisition piece, which again, not something that I really knew about with regards to exits, but they were all the kind of articles that were coming out, or a bunch of the bigger ones were like, London, like young London founder launches brand on £1,000. I didn't know that was exceptional. I didn't know that was unusual, but that level of resourcefulness in a world of entrepreneurs where a family and friends round is 250 grand. Yeah. That was a culture shock for me. That's impressive, basically. And everyone wants someone that can be creative and is a doer and can do a lot with a little. And so I think that was a big part, as they wanted me to come on board and look at their brand portfolio globally and apply some of those kind of marketing and strategic things, I guess, that I had quite naturally.
Did you have a moment to decompress? Did you take some time off? What was that phase like?
It was weird. So I think like I've been living, I don't want to say it was like a poverty mindset. I mean, to a degree, but I was like an extremely like frugal person. So I would never buy food out unless I absolutely needed to. If I needed to buy food out on these long days when I was trekking around London with a backpack full of gin, it would be like a £1 sandwich from Boots. It would be like very minimal spending. I would save on everything. I, for example, like never paid for a cab before I exited. And so I walked everywhere. I saved money every single turn that I could. I didn't have subscriptions. I didn't shop a lot for stuff. Like I was just very, very frugal. So that mindset, it basically like you see the number in your account, but your mind can't really process it for a long time. So I found it hard to spend money more than I'd been spending already, if that makes sense. I remember meeting someone that said, you need to allocate like £10,000 to reward yourself so that your brain learns that this is like you've done a good thing. It's training it almost. I don't really know if that's necessary, but I think I did have to reprogram my brain. So anyway, I started doing things like taking cabs everywhere and, flying in business class and first and going on holidays and things like that. But like quite quickly, I guess I realized that, and I did take some time out, but I was working for the acquirer like remotely for like a couple of years. So that was kind of rough because I kind of couldn't talk about the exit. So I kind of just had to like go dead on socials, which is quite weird since I've been sharing the journey a lot. But yeah, so I was doing things like taking cabs everywhere, which felt so fancy to me. Like when you've lived frugally and you've come from a low income background, your level of fancy feast is like other people's everyday life. But then I realized I like walking and, all of those kind of things. So you end up settling at a mid ground and realizing that actually, and it's so annoying when people say this, but money does a lot of things and it gives you freedom of time. but it doesn't fundamentally change what you enjoy, I guess. And so if you love walking and, you're not going to spend all your time in cabs, even though you can. But I think it just gives you choices, essentially. So yeah, I had about a year and a half, best part of 2 years with the acquirer working remotely, but it was through lockdowns and COVID. And so, yeah, it wasn't the most, organized. I think it was like there was a lot of freedom to kind of work across things as they came up. Um, but yeah, I think like many entrepreneurs, desperate to get out of there, really, just so I could move on to the next phase of my life. And yeah, I just took a bit of time out really to travel. I bought the house, planned that renovation and do all those works and things like that. Managing a building site, I've learned, is probably, honestly, like, in many ways harder than running a business for me because the decision fatigue is nonstop. Like, I had to learn and make decisions on, like, thousands of things and learn, like, what is the standard? Like, what height do I want a doorway? How wide do I want each doorway? Like, just all of these different things, which I found, like, really interesting, and I got super into the design side of things, but it was super isolating. It wasn't intellectually rewarding, like, say, working on a project, and I just missed people that weren't like
Okay.
builders and like coming to let them in, and I let like kind of tradespeople in, and just the decisions, the endless decisions. Honestly, that was a lot. So yeah, it was a little bit of time before I started up my next thing, which I think was Paper Round before, which was a brief thing, and then moving on to Hunch, I think God, would it have been last year? Yeah, I think so.
Definitely that period of decompressing you needed. So now you're doing on Hunch. In a nutshell, what is Hunch?
So it's a platform to help inspire people um, into kind of different careers, well-paying careers, seeing where their skills fit into the world of work. I think the world of work is basically something that is completely bizarre and unknown to people until they are in it. And even after they're in it, many people 10 years into their career don't know that most careers exist. And it's also something that's like a living, breathing thing that's like evolving, right? Because roles are shifting. There will be a lot in the next 5 years. So the inspiration came from really that I didn't have all the knowledge. I didn't have any of the knowledge really about careers. So I find that the people that go into well-paying, high-earning careers like medicine, law, corporate, consultancy, all of that kind of stuff, they generally have like a family member that knows about it, or they're in, you know what I mean? It's like it's circles. And so that knowledge and privilege of being able to get into those positions and knowing they exist and knowing what to study and knowing someone to get them an internship was very much something that was amongst, I'd say, the middle classes, or,
Yeah.
people, but not someone from my background. So there's been a real fire in my belly to kind of like level the playing field a bit, because I've done incredibly well, obviously in a non-traditional path, but I think the odds of that having been successful, etc., is just so rare. And I just think that everyone should have access to well-paying, exciting careers, because ultimately you spend a third of your life working. And many people have to work 5 days a week, and so you want to be doing what you love, really, what fills you up. And work is one of those things that's very transformative on your confidence, your self-esteem, your happiness levels. And it also, I guess, reflects on who you work with. So there's that social mobility piece there as well.
This is taking me back 20 years. When I was in college, I founded a magazine called Inspire and targeted at other college students to solve exactly this problem. I realized we just didn't know what was happening out there. So a lot of people graduated college 23, 24 in Nigeria, graduated a bit older, and then they were totally shocked at what happened in the outside world. But they've lost kind of 5 years that they should have used to prepare because they just didn't know. So this is taking me back.
Love that, by the way. That's super cool. And I think you just need to see it to believe it. Like, you need to see it, they exist. Like, there's so many random job roles now, like community manager. The idea that you can like run a group, a social group, and put on like cool events and stuff, and you can get paid well for that is like mind blowing. I know someone that basically gets paid to test supercars. They just drive around supercars all year, and they get paid really well for it. And it's like you can make up jobs as well. Like it's really like I don't know. It's really, I find work generally, and the whole like what we consider work, etc. That whole psychology piece on it, super, super interesting. But yeah, it's how the hell are you supposed to be something if you don't know it exists? That's the long and the short of it.
But how's it been since you started? Did you say you started this last year?
Yes, along with a couple of co-founders, we started working on it at the beginning of last year, I believe. God, like time goes fast, basically. But yeah, I remember it was just last summer we were in there with a whiteboard figuring out how we would focus. And I think we started off with quite a broad concept of this whole like leveling the playing field, and what that has ended up incorporating is basically a platform of tools. So we realized that knowing about a career option is not that helpful if you don't know how to get those jobs. And so we built a really sophisticated matching algorithm. It basically the platform, the AI learns about you, asks you a bunch of questions, continually learns from your activity on the platform, matches you to roles that are live, and then it has a sort of career coach that will literally coach you and interview prep and make the cover letter and make the CV to get you that role. And it's really amazing, actually. Now we've been live. We went live earlier this year with a sort of MVP, but we've been live on mobile for the last couple of months in more of a proper kind of coming together, less of an MVP version. And the results we're seeing are amazing. It's crazy seeing something out in the wild, but I had a message the other day from someone that was like, I did this last year in the end of my undergraduate. He's like, I wasn't getting that many interviews. He's like, this time round using Hunch, I'm getting like 3 times the amount of interviews, further ahead interviews, and he had offers from like Samsung, an interview with JP Morgan, all of these like big companies just from using our tools. So I think it's really cool to know it's out there and it's helping people.
I love that. How would you describe your perfect user? Describe that.
So basically, our platform, I guess, it's interesting because it makes it bespoke for you, and it will obviously coach you on any job, and it will make jobs that match you. We had technically built a platform that could be used by a senior professional right down to a junior, but we've built it really in mind with Gen Z, with people who are coming out of uni, with people who are looking for to start their career, or maybe they're 1 to 3 years in. And we just want to make it as accessible as it possibly can be, because again, like understanding how to apply for a role is knowledge that not everyone has. How to structure a CV, how a cover letter should be written, but also it's become far more complex because of AI and things like ATS, with applicant tracking system softwares that basically every single big company uses, which filters out CVs and applications based on keywords. So like we have a system basically that optimizes, that gets you through so a human actually sees your application. I think there's things you can learn, and then there's just technological help that you need, because these days you have to be really good at applying for jobs, not just being a good candidate for that job, if that makes sense.
You mentioned early on that you have some co-founders in this with Hunch. Have there been any things that have surprised you now building what I would say is a tech plot, building in a different field from MUHU? What have been the biggest surprises, both positive and negative?
I think there's been, so you've got a couple of types of entrepreneur, right? The ones that want to do it over and over again in the same industry, and then ones like me, like I love the learning. I want to expand my mind, and so I never want to stay in the same industry necessarily. I always wanted to gravitate towards tech, but I think it was just too early in my first business. I just didn't have enough experience. You need to raise money and have engineers and all that. But the biggest thing for me, I think, has been going from running a business entirely on my own to having a team, which I think is like in some ways amazing, because when you're off sick or you're not doing that well, there's always other people who are moving the business along on the other side, and you're not lonely. I think that's one of the biggest things that I struggle with, crippling like loneliness and isolation, building MUHU. On the other side, people have different opinions to you about how to like run the business and do things like that. So I think there's obviously challenges, but I think overall we do have a really great team.
I have a quote from you where you talked about bootstrapping is essential in building a business. I'm conscious that this is a tech business you're building now with Hunch. Do you think you're going to bootstrap it all the way, or what's the plan for fundraising?
So yeah, as you say, very different model. We have a fantastic team of AI specialist engineers, but obviously that comes with engineer salaries and that kind of burn rate. So I think it's a very different ballpark, sort of like situation versus what I was doing before, which was very much what I call a bedroom business. So we have raised some money so far, both at the start and some bits and bobs with angels. I'd say that I think in tech terms, we've been bootstrapped in the sense that we've got very far with not a lot of money. For example, like we've acquired thousands of users through organic strategies like TikToks. And so, yeah, we've made a little go a long way. We are fundraising now to get to our next stage, which is going to be important to just, now we've cracked down on what is making us grow and what the market needs. I think that next phase just needs more people to like help us to speed up and dominate the market. But yeah, it's really exciting to be where we are. We're launching an interview tool. So the idea is that we're basically going to know more about our candidates than any other job platform. So like a deep dive on their psychology, culture fit, but also because they'll be doing interview prep and things like that, we'll have an idea of their skill set as well, pre-vetted. So the idea that if you want an early career hire across marketing, tech, etc., you come to Hunch. And we are also looking to essentially equip our users with AI skills, essentially what every business needs when they're thinking about like the next year. Everyone needs to be implementing AI. So I think that's really exciting, and yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity for someone to come into the company as an investor quite early doors.
And what type of investors are you looking at this stage? More angels or traditional VCs?
I think traditional VCs / family offices.
So let's hope we've got enough.
If you're watching,
you never know, right? Okay. Last question on Hunch. You've talked about the fundraising. You've talked about the brands that are using the platform. What about on the other side in terms of the businesses? Do you have any partnerships, or are you working with big businesses to solve their own problem too?
So we've done quite a few pilots now, and we're just really opening up our business side with regards to. So we've done pilots with startups. Interestingly, had some amazing case studies where they've kind of put the job ad out with Hunch, and they've also put it out on like Welcome to the Jungle and other bits. And for like 2 to 3 roles, Hunch candidates have been the ones that got hired. So I think that speaks really strongly to our track record. Again, as we grow, we're going to have a real big opportunity to make our talent that uses Hunch stand out from the competition with regards to the AI training, and also just having more data points. I think the problem is that traditionally with CVs and things and in the way that we hire, like that hasn't changed a lot. And what companies are really looking at is how do I reduce thousands of applicants and make sure that only the higher quality ones are coming through. And so, yeah, I think we are starting to open up, and I think going into 2026, we're going to really ramp up that beat. We also have a couple of university partnerships with City University and a few others as well, which is exciting, because I think universities now more than ever as well need to be upskilling. They need to be making a degree more valuable, right? It's not just about academia now. You have to be employable. And as students look at 60K average debt coming out of university for a standard undergraduate degree, it's becoming less and less appealing when you can earn and learn through degree apprenticeships and all of those other bits.
And thanks for that. Yep. Maybe just looking back a little bit. You've done a little bit of, you've talked about angel investing. I had a previous guest on the podcast who says in 12 years, he hasn't made money on angel investing. Is angel investing overrated?
Depends what you're looking for. Okay. I think, and it also depends on what stage. I didn't invest with an investor's head on. I backed a few projects that I was really excited by / I believed in the founders. I think if you're investing, you need to believe in the founders, because the idea can change and pivot. It's the founders, realistically, they're going to be the ones to be able to do that or not. It's super well compensated in sense of the tax rebates you get off your income tax, etc., for a reason. Like, I don't think that you should drop an early stage angel investment with almost any expectation of return per se. I think it's fun.
We've talked about all the good parts, the multiple acquisition offers, the exits, all the fun stuff. But you and I know it is never a smooth journey. You've mentioned that this has been the toughest year for you.
Yeah. It's been a weird year. It's been a tough year, I think, for so many reasons. Like, I think launches are always incredibly stressful. And I have that overthinking and that like all or nothing mentality sometimes, which I'm working on. So I think I was in a very high stress state with Hunch as we kind of figured out our user acquisition strategy and exactly what type of content worked and exactly how we funnel through users. And I want to see that we've launched fast and dirty. So that means that like we had a laptop thing like site before we had like mobile, and it was really difficult to get all the traffic off. So I think like I throw myself in like 1000% when I go into a business. And so like it's on my mind every second of the day. But like alongside that, I had an assault on the tube early this year, which was in itself obviously difficult. But I think I discovered a bit of a safety issue on the tube, which I decided I wanted to talk about in the press, like get the message out to make change. But long and short of it is I went through quite a big burnout, and I had to take for the first time like a couple of weeks out early in the summer. And I had some pretty bad generalized anxiety to a degree that I've not had before. So it's reminded me that I do need to be careful, because with the ADHD and stuff, it's taught me to not get so worked up about things that don't matter. Not that they don't matter, but it's like focus on my lane and not overwhelm myself and not continuously volunteer for things that I don't need to be doing. So I think managing my time better. It's given me a lot of empathy for people with mental health. I've had mental health before, so it's not like I didn't have empathy, but I think experiencing to the level I did was very scary. It's kind of like changed. I wouldn't say it's like made me less ambitious, but my ambitions now include having good mental health. Like when I look forward to the next like couple of years, one thing in my mind is that I want to be stable and feel calm and not had any of the things that I went through happen again. When I had dengue, which is like what they call a tropical disease, but I went to India in January, and it can be a very serious illness. I was in and out of hospital and specialist clinics for like the first bit of the year. So honestly, like when I look back at the year, am I surprised that I've had such a low point and a struggle and like rebuilding things? No, but yeah, it's been an interesting year, and I think it's shifted my perspective on a lot of things.
You and I talked offline about all these challenges, and I guess the approach is if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Given all this, we've talked about how difficult it is. There's a tweet I saw recently from Mark Andreessen of A16Z, and he talks about encouraging more young people and more people to be entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts? Should we encourage more people to go down the entrepreneurship path, or should we be more honest about the pros and cons?
I 100% think that we should encourage entrepreneurship, but I don't think that entrepreneurship exists in the way only in the way that people think of it. So I don't think you have to start a business to be entrepreneurial. So I think there's a difference between being a business owner, which I agree is very stressful. It's definitely not for everyone. But ultimately, I think entrepreneurship is about passion, basically. It's about following your passion. And so I think that giving people the skills, the opportunity, the freedom and the support to follow their passions is an incredible thing. Obviously, for me, it's also been a social mobility piece that's enabled me to have financial freedom. But yeah, just back to that entrepreneurial bit, I think you can be entrepreneurial in a business. I think you can ask to work on some projects, work on businesses within businesses. I don't think it necessarily has to be like I quit my job and I'm doing 70-hour weeks working on my business. I think entrepreneurialism is about exploring your curiosity and your passion and finding people as well who lift you up and give you ideas and show you things that you didn't know existed. I think what we really need is more of a framework and a free/accessible way for people to just learn about the skills that they need, because I say that's the biggest thing holding people back. Like, where do I start? How do I structure? What do I need to do first?
If we reconvene in 2.5 years, hopefully I'm still hosting the podcast, where do you think you'll be? How do you see things panning out with Hunch and with life in that period?
Honestly, at the rate that my life changes, it is so hard to say. Like, I hope I am confident. I'd like to have done things like face my fear of public speaking. I'd like to maybe have a podcast of my own. In terms of Hunch, I think like the potential there is absolutely huge. So I would love to see Hunch big in the US, in multiple European countries, helping businesses to just facilitate hiring and training of young people. Because I think with AI, it's a scary time for young people, because those junior jobs are reducing in number. Outsourcing is going on a lot to other countries, which is completely sensible for businesses. But I would like to encourage and facilitate everything I can do in my power to have a better situation for young people getting hired. And I want Hunch to be the go-to platform where you want to either get a job as a young person starting their career. And then I also want to be the first company that a business thinks of when they think, okay, we need some creative, strong talent coming in that we can train into our future, management and beyond.
Fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes. I have 3 questions, which I want you to answer in one sentence or less. How would you describe entrepreneurship?
Passion, and curiosity.
If you were given a challenge to start another business and you were handed £1,000 and the plan was to scale it within a year, would you take on the challenge and how?
Yeah, I would take on the challenge. I think that's really fun. It's also a challenge that I would like to run myself. My issue is I have so many ideas. Sorry, it's supposed to be quick fire. I think I would like to do something around people. I love people's stories and I want people to connect more. So I think in the digital age, I would love to do something like in person, grounded, and help people to connect with each other.
Amazing. And then the final one, what's the biggest myth about entrepreneurship?
I think you need to have loads of money to do it, I think. Yeah, that's a big one.
And you are a living, breathing proof of that. On that note, thank you so much. I've had an amazing time speaking with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for joining me, Sally.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.